Hello, and thank you for joining us for our second Tertulia of the book Tertulia's book launch edition. We're really glad to have you here today. My name is Christy Elaine, and I'm from St. Thomas University. I'm one of the organizers of this event, along with Tracy Glynn from St. Thomas, Matthew Hayes from St. Thomas, and Daniel Tubb from UNB. We thank you for being here. The organizers and our presenter this evening are joining you from Stolen Wolastoqey territory. We would like to thank our sponsors for the event, Fernwood, the NB Media Co-op, and Nilda's Pizza, been great supporters of this event, so we thank them. And we want to remind you that we're coming back again next week with Kelly Bronson, who will be speaking on her book, The Immaculate Conception of Data, where she'll be looking at agriculture and big data. She was a former STU faculty member, is now a current CRC at University of Ottawa. So we hope that you'll join us again at this time next Wednesday, and that you'll support Nilda's by doing so with pizza. And with that, I will turn it over to Tracy to introduce our speaker for this evening.
Thanks, Christy. As an organizer with Reproductive Justice MB, I'm very happy to introduce Martha Paynter, who doesn't need an introduction to many of us here that I see here tonight. Those of us who have been engaged in the movement for reproductive health care and justice in New Brunswick. A native of Fredericton, Dr. Martha Paynter is the author of Abortion to Abolition, Reproductive Health and Justice in Canada. That she'll be discussing tonight. Dr. Paynter has just received a Doctor of Philosophy from the Dalhousie University School of Nursing. Martha has 20 years of experience working to advance health equity. She's a registered nurse specializing in abortion and reproductive health care. She's also an assistant professor at the University of New Brunswick. In the School of Nursing. Her teaching and research and practice focuses on the intersection of reproductive health and the justice system. She's also a faculty member of the Contraception and Abortion Research Team based at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of British Columbia, and is with the Health Law Institute at the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University. Martha is also the founder and former chair of Wellness Within, an organization for health and justice based in Nova Scotia. She's currently on their board and is their director of research. So you may have read some of Martha's work. She writes great articles, a frequent contributor to Briar Patch, CBC, The Coast, the Halifax Examiner, The Conversation, Saltwire. Writing as well as speaking, like she is tonight, about publicly funded healthcare, prison abolition, and gender equity. She's received numerous awards, including the Senate of Canada 150 Anniversary Medal for her volunteer service to the country. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Martha.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's really nice to get to do an event in my hometown. This is the first time doing this for the book. Really, I appreciate being invited to do this. And I do know many of you online, and those I have never met yet. I look forward to doing so. So what I thought I would do is read from the prison chapter, the 5th chapter, because today I'm really angry about the proposed prison for Fredericton. And all of us who are from New Brunswick, ever passed through New Brunswick, we could talk all day, all night about abortion. And we could get to that after, but I just want to spend a minute being angry about something else. So that's where I'm going to start. So in a very straightforward homage to the reproductive justice movement, the book is organized into, first a chapter about general bodily autonomy, and then a chapter about the right to not have children, to abortion, the right to have children, the right to parent in safety from the state, from state violence. And finally, the last chapter is about parenting in prison. So I'll just read for a bit. Kind of all crunched in here. Okay. The prison system violates reproductive justice in every possible way. Bodily autonomy is under constant threat. What you do, how you move, who you touch, and when you eat, urinate, and sleep are all observed and policed. People in prison are systematically withheld healthcare, including family planning services and assisted reproductive technologies, denying them the right to choose to have or not have children. Prison is a two-sided violation of the right to parent. Parents are separated from their children when those children, as youth or young adults, experience incarceration. And when parents are incarcerated, they are separated from their children, partners, communities, impeding their ability to parent. These reproductive injustices are, of course, disproportionately borne by Black and Indigenous people. Rife with violence and disease, prisons are inherently incompatible with parenting safely. The fight for the rights of parents in prison is not just about the right to parent while incarcerated. It is about the fundamental human rights violations of prison and how prison dehumanizes, invalidating family, love, and parenthood. Reproductive justice includes the right to parent because being able to parent your own children is essential to your health. You cannot be healthy if you are terrified about what is happening to your baby in foster care. You cannot be healthy if how your baby is fed is determined by someone else while your breasts swell and ache. You cannot be healthy if you are constantly worried about demonstrating imperfect parenting under the watch of prison guards. You will be angry, anxious, and unwell. In Canada, the health of incarcerated people is theoretically protected by provincial and federal corrections legislation. The state has a duty to provide healthcare to incarcerated people beyond its obligation to non-incarcerated people because prisoners are under state custody. They've lost the autonomy to make their own appointments, choose their own food, decide when and how to exercise, and so on. Federal legislation stipulates incarcerated individuals have the right to the same health services as are available outside. Section 77 of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act instructs Correctional Services Canada to provide programs specific to women's needs. That same act stipulates federally sentenced people must receive essential health care, and that healthcare must conform to professionally accepted norms. A prisoner's health must be considered in all decisions affecting them. Despite these directives, healthcare is the most common issue in complaints by federally sentenced people. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms covers human rights protections for all persons in Canada, including prisoners. Section 7, protecting the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and separation of mother and baby violates that security. Section 12 protects people from cruel and unusual treatment by the state, which should preclude putting pregnant prisoners in solitary confinement or shackling them in labor. Section 15, also called the equality provision, guarantees everyone equal protection under the law, regardless of sex or gender. Pregnancy and the possibility of becoming pregnant are experiences that can only happen to people who have a uterus, and failure to account for them in carceral systems is simply discriminatory. These are just the federal level requirements in Canada. The United Nations rules for the treatment of women prisoners and non-custodial measures for women offenders outline international responsibilities for the treatment of people incarcerated in facilities designated for women. Wherever children are concerned in policy domains, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child applies. All government decisions affecting children must be made in that child's best interest. Article 7 of the CRC asserts a child's right to know and be cared for by his or her parents. Article 24 says kids have a right to enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health and to facilities for the treatment of illness and rehabilitation of health. Parental incarceration is well understood as an adverse child event associated with increased risk of disease and premature death. Yet children are almost never considered in sentencing decisions in Canada. The dehumanization of prisoners results in the dehumanization of their children. This chapter begins with the story of Emily Boyle, who went to federal prison twice, in the 1920s and 1930s. Each time she was pregnant and advocated to keep her baby with her when it was born. The first time she was successful, the second time she was not. She was not the first woman in Canada to have a baby stay with her in prison, but she is possibly the first for whom there is a strong record, thanks to the historical research of Dr. Ted McCoy. In her story, a core conflict is at play. Although the state understood babies need their mothers, particularly in an era before the popularization of infant formula, and motherhood was patronizingly perceived as a potentially rehabilitative process for criminalized women, no prison's mandate was served by accommodating babies. Babies were assessed as a means to an end, but not considered humans with rights of their own, and certainly not as humans whose rights the carceral system had to uphold. Just after Boyle's second incarceration, the Central Prison for Women opened in Kingston, Ontario. The pain and dire conditions experienced by prisoners there and the increasing incarceration of Indigenous women prompted the formation of a task force on federally sentenced women in the late 1980s. The task force published Creating Choices, a blueprint for reforming the system, in 1990. Major upsets occurred in the following years, including the 1994 strip search of shackled women at the Prison for Women, a commission of inquiry report on the incident by Louis Arbour, and then the closure of the federal prison in 2000. Our regional system was designed to replace it, and each facility was supposed to house parents and children together through the institutional mother-child program. At the provincial level, British Columbia opened a mother-baby program in the 1970s, and it remains the only province with an operational program. In the next three stories in this chapter, centering the experiences of Indigenous women Renee Ackaby, Lisa Whitford, and Amanda Inglis, I explain and critique the federal and provincial programs, the egregious and incessant violation of their reproductive rights to access health care, to live in safety from violence, to parent their children, and to have their children be parented, are at most extreme in the prison system. The incarceration of parents denies their children the right to be parented and renews the trauma that fuels criminalization. As of 2021, Indigenous women make up only almost 50% of women behind bars. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission called for an end to the disproportionate incarceration of Indigenous people. Yet the numbers have climbed every year since the TRC was published in 2015 and remain completely unaddressed, despite report after report calling for action. The final story in this chapter is about Julie Belota, who experienced the unimaginable. Ignored, insulted, and isolated in labor, she gave birth in a filthy jail cell. Not 100 years ago in medieval lockup, but in Ottawa in 2012. She required emergency treatment for massive blood loss, and the baby, Gianni, required intensive care. The two faced a year of torment by the justice system and the child protection system, all in the full glare of the media. When Gianni was just 13 months old, he died in his sleep. There is no righting the wrongs of incarcerating pregnant people, parents, and caregivers. Mother-baby programs will not solve the systemic social problems facing criminalized families: colonialism, racism, poverty, trauma. These programs are a stopgap at best, and at worst, a manifestation of further racism, inequality, surveillance, and punishment. The women in this chapter worked incredibly hard to stop prisons from trampling their rights to health and to parent, and in so doing have exposed just how incompatible incarceration is with both. Prison abolition is a necessary part of reproductive justice work. So that's the intro to the fifth chapter. and we can talk about each one of those women or anything you want to talk about. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Martha. I'm going to help coordinate the question and answer session.